So yesterday over on Ginger JRPG, I posted Yoshi P's update on what is acceptable PvP behavior in the game. And I started to actually see some interesting comments that I want to highlight for you guys in today's video. And after reading through these comments, I actually went over the latest Quasi video to see what the rest of the community was talking about, especially as it relates to PvP. And what I found is that while Yoshi P is talking about, I guess, the toxic side of PvP in this regards, we can always be honest about that. PvP tends to bring out a certain, I guess, response from players. We'll explore some of this in your comments, but more than anything else, what he didn't say, and he didn't talk about the cheaters and the botters and how that is actually impacting the experience as well. And if that goes unabated or unaddressed, my personal concern when it comes to cheating in Final Fantasy XIV is that it then encourages and permits more cheaters to take part in it. We've seen this happen across multiple PvP games. But here's the thing, like, don't take that statement as a negative statement. It's actually incredibly positive. Yoshi P and the team have delivered. They have delivered an incredible PvP experience, one that people are willing to risk their accounts just to try and win. Now, I don't necessarily understand it from a competitive play perspective. You win, you lose, you try again. I think that's the thrill that I get from PvP. But beyond that, I want to spend more time on your comments today. So if you guys enjoy these kind of videos, like, favorite, subscribe, and share. This is a player feedback. This is where we dive into what you guys have to say and we talk about it. So first comment comes from Nikki saying, honestly, the new policy about PvP has been received negatively by the Final Fantasy XIV community as a whole. While being a member of several Final Fantasy XIV Facebook groups, yes, I know Facebook is very toxic in and of itself, the absolute outrage and overall rejection of the behavior policies is enormous. In one group in particular, the disapproval of the behavioral policies is a constant daily discussion, mostly filled with toxic outrage and complete negativity of said changes. Sadly, whether banishment is a threat or not, players within the community will ignore the warnings of Yoshi P and will continue with their behaviors as they deem appropriate. And here's the thing that I'm going to kind of jump in on Nikki's thought here. Yoshi P and the team, whether you like it or not, they have massively restrictive policies on communication, so much so that I've seen people really take the thought process to some really like extremes in terms of like how that, they're restricting freedom of speech. And this is something that I've just seen in the comments section, not necessarily is that the prevailing viewpoint of the community itself. But beyond that extreme kind of viewpoint, I see that within the game itself, I'm never really worried about toxicity within the game and its communication since they really implemented these policies. I've shared multiple times my experience with it, with my wife's experience with it. I've been called a liar because of those sort of experiences, because people think that I'm talking about in the current game and not in Heaven's Word and before they made those changes. So we've seen a shift. We've seen actually how people self-police because they know that there's a risk of actually getting a ban or suspension based off of how people communicate in game. But here's the thing, and here's what I've actually responded to Nikki with, what I think is interesting, is that I see the toxic side more on the social media than anything else. Yes, you don't technically see it in game. And that's because I think it has just then said, hey, this is not a safe space to be an asshole. Let's just shift over back into kind of social media. Facebook, you can see it across anything, Twitter and Reddit. In fact, I actually got pinged in a couple of things regarding something else completely. And they're like, how ridiculous is this? And in my view of this is like, isn't that just the nature of social media? I like the nature of YouTube because you can hear in my voice. Sometimes I'm on camera and you can see in my face whether I'm sincere or really frustrated. Like I can communicate more effectively, I think, through the nature of video, or at least in the nature of this audio, than I can in a simple text. And so I always kind of say, like, you're never really going to change anybody's mind with a quick worded text message. And so I don't necessarily try to convince people one way or the other on Twitter of anything. I just, try to understand where they're coming from. So I think a part of the frustration when it comes down to that is that I'm a PvP player. I have absolutely adored the new PvP mode. I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm in love with it. I think it brings a whole new life and a whole new, joy that I'm actually getting in Final Fantasy XIV by doing the PvP. And by the way, like, if you guys haven't seen, I've been posting the controller guides over on Ginger JRPG. So hopefully I'll have a link in the description if you guys haven't been following that content over there. If you want more Final Fantasy XIV focused news and guides. That's where those are living now. But beyond that, like a little, self plug in this regards, I think essentially like there is the aspect that what Yoshi P addressed is kind of important, but there is kind of a PvP side of some things. Like he mentioned fireworks going off when you down an opponent. I actually thought that was quite clever. I was like, that's pretty cool. That's interesting to see. And so it is this weird spot for Final Fantasy. It is this weird mode right now because the game has been so PvE focused. They've actually created something really worth it for PvP, and PvP does have some kind of culture, but this also then speaks to the people who are worried about actually having a good PvP mode that would bring out that side in us, that competitive side, that side that wants to win and gets frustrated when we don't, or when we get paired with the lethargic player who is just throwing in the towel and giving up. And that, I think, is something that is frustrating personally. It's like I always feel like I just give them my best all the way through the game, win or lose, try again. But people just like, oh, like we lost ground in the first 5 minutes, in the first minute of this match, we're clearly going to lose, and they just give up. Like that in and of itself is demoralizing, and it can be frustrating. So it's a weird thing. I'd love to know your thoughts on this, because I like, again, these aren't just Brian thought, bubbles. I love your all's comments, and that's where these videos kind of form and go from there. Now, our second comment actually ends up being kind of 3 comments in one. It's kind of a discussion that's going on over there. And KO Beast writes, if PvP ain't for you, then don't play it. I was like,
if PvP ain't for you, don't play it.
If you can't handle losing, then don't play it. If you're easily frustrated, don't play it. Good Lord. Lastly, if you want to play it, then don't. If you don't want to play, then don't. It's not that hard to understand. Good Lord. Banter in PvP is normal. If you can't handle it, then don't play it. Random Spectator follows this up, spoken like a true bronzy. I don't mind losing if the enemy team was just better coordinated and overall better players, but losing 5 games in a row because my teammates would rather play team deathmatch than capture or push the objective, that's just frustrating and annoying in ranked. If you just want to screw around and have fun in a casual way, that's what the casual playlist is for. Ranked is for players who are trying to win and climb and get better. Luca follows it up, says, Random Spectator, completely agree. Telling people not to care in a competitive mode is stupid and pointless. Only complete normie casuals are fine with losing. To be frank, this reaction by the community is kind of pathetic. I guess the game being as friendly as it is has caused the player base to become complete snowflakes. Let's just get this straight. In PvP mode that allows zero chatting, people are sad that their feelings are hurt because someone spammed good game too many times. This is actually pathetic. But playing like a complete troglodyte, I don't know what that word means, we'll just roll with it, and losing the match for your team trying to rank up, that's fine and not toxic behavior whatsoever. I think that they should focus on cheating and not on hurt feelings. And so this is kind of like what I was kind of pointing out at the start of this video. Like the biggest disappointment or setback is that they really didn't talk about cheating in this post. But then again, going into this, like there's got to be a line. We can't just sit here and say like, okay, you lost the match and now you're gonna go like harass somebody on social media or in game chat like, hey, you guys suck and how could you do this to us and blah blah blah. But at the same time, having a little bit of that competitive kind of braggadocious behavior is something that I think is inherent with PvP games. If you don't like that, I understand. I'm not trying to disrespect your point of view, but I don't know. I guess as somebody who does a lot of PvP in games, I want to kind of touch on one last point being talked about. It's like, how, like, if you're okay with losing. My whole worldview on that is just because I have played competitively and I, in high end and high intense situations where I was paid to play and things like that. My whole viewpoint is I leave it on the field. Like, I'm going to bring my best every time. I'm going to do my best absolutely every time, but these are team-based games. These aren't individually focus-based games. And so at the end of the day, like, yeah, I'm not, not like, woohoo, we lost. But at the same time, like, I'm going to always give it my best. So win or lose, I can try to learn from that situation and I can try to get better on my own. Being that I have no control over the team that I'm on, literally this is just me focusing in on what I can do with a random group. I'm going to try to bring my absolute best. And that's just the mindset that I've always brought to games. Like, losing isn't fun, but I don't like, it doesn't affect me in a negative way. I look at a win as something to be celebrated, and I look at a loss as something to teach me something from, and that's just kind of how I go with it. Now, we got 2 more comments. Warrior Light writes, I think players losing it over and over is causing frustration for players breaking down and losing a big streak. It's very hard to rank up to the second week in this new PvP. I noticed a big change on PvP in higher ranks, and the people start spamming it and screw people up like nice job or good match, but that's part of but part of this is the cheats or plugins causing this grief, announcing your abilities and auto target them when they are about to use a limit break or whatever, are less than half health. I've seen players very accurate, very accurate to those abilities, and it feels unreal. But it does suck to lose over and over to somebody who's bot using. And that's where the hardest thing, the biggest challenge when it comes to cheaters in this regards, is that we want there to be some kind of review, because some people are just going to be good at the game. And you don't want to sit here and be like so good that like you get auto banned. And so I think that's one of the things that we're seeing within MMOs as they try to implement more AI into kind of analysis. People, as my nose kind of is a little bit stopped up, sorry about that. People are a little bit, like edgy on just trusting kind of like algorithms to sit here and say like who's doing right and doing wrong. So it's going to be a challenge, and that's where I hopefully will see something from Yoshi P actually address the cheaters and the issues they're in, and that's something we're going to have to wait to explore in future videos itself. And yeah, like that's where, if left unaddressed, then all of a sudden it becomes like, yeah, you're not condemning it, so you're condoning it. So like, hey, well, if you're not cheating, and that's what we've seen happen in other games that eventually finally kind of clawed that back. And in good ways. Like honestly, I think one of the things I've enjoyed seeing in Destiny is I've been seeing my KDA rise now that I'm not necessarily just getting one shot like at random spots. Like I think that's nice, especially playing on PC. I'm sure people, like when you have a mode that people want to play and want to win, it will bring that out. And the fact is, I think the cheaters speak highly to what they've actually created within the world of 14. But that's a problem that they're going to definitely absolutely have to address. And our last comment, Asmarus writes, I haven't seen much of any negative or abusive behavior myself, but my win rate is under 40%, so I have yet to make it out of bronze. LOL, losing repeatedly is frustrating, but I don't take it out on the other folks. When I get frustrated, I switch jobs, try a fresh perspective, or go do a dungeon, or just hang out in FC chat for a while before trying again. And that's, I think, a good perspective. I think that's a really good note to kind of end on. That's usually kind of what I advise. Like when I feel my temperature or temper rising, because it does, like I'm a human being. Some people think, I don't know what they think. Somebody like, oh, you're always happy. It's like, I feel happy a good majority of the time. That's not an always case. And generally speaking, I delete those videos where I'm just like particularly like maybe ticked off or peeved, but the core aspect of it, and not delete after I post them, literally like, well, that's just not a good video. That's not what I want to say. I need to rethink kind of why I'm doing this or thinking this way. But at its core, like, yeah, like when I feel like my temper is rising, like it's best to kind of take a pause, get myself out of the situation, rethink why and what's going on there. But yeah, like I think that's what frustrates me, like as my final thought here, the most when it all boils down to it, is lethargy. Like I don't mind somebody kind of like sitting here and like using the chat to communicate their frustration or excitement, but I think when I see people not actively engaging, when they're like, well, they've already gotten to the point, like I've seen people tell me that because they've almost gotten to the goal, pushed the crystal, that there's nothing you can do, you might as well just give up. And I've won games where they've almost put the crystal in and we've taken it all the way back down the field. Tells me that it's really about focus and it's really about teamwork. And it's kind of, it's not a guarantee that just because the enemy team has done X that it's a guaranteed loss and you might as well throw in the towel. I don't know. I think that even in that moment, even if the losing is, a greater percentage of the guarantee, I think there's opportunity there to try and improve ourselves, to get better, to have a better experience. And obviously dust ourselves off, come back and ready for the next match, see what you could do better, think through the situations, kind of like what caught you off guard, where you what skill might have been on cooldown that you didn't use at the right time, and obviously hopefully not going to bots and hacks and things like that to get the wins itself. But anyway, guys, these are some comments that I want to highlight for you guys as a part of this discussion. Looking forward to reading your comments in today's video. Thanks so much for being here. If you feel like I earn it, like, favorite, subscribe, and share. It's a great way to help the channel grow, and I thank you guys so much for the opportunity to talk to you guys today. Hopefully this was a good video for you guys to listen to. Hopefully you have a wonderful day, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video. But until then, take care.
Yeah. It's time to chill out on the couch and read some comments. That's right. You know me when it comes to Destiny. I'm off with the clan, and I'm glad you're feeling better. Oh yeah.